People who've eaten at a restaurant from Gordon Ramseys Kitchen Nightmares. How was it? I used to treat myself occasionally to Zocalo, a Mexican restaurant in Philadelphia. The food was vastly better before Gordon changed the menu. Their entire problem was location, on the fringe of two universities, but not the kind of place students would go. Staff and faculty loved it, but it was too far away for the usual lunch period, so people would go to the vastly inferior Mexican place in the center of campus. Even though the service and food were terrible and would take as long or longer to finish as it would have to walk to Zocalo, if you watch the episode, you could tell Gordon had a difficult time coming up with problems. The kitchen was old but clean. The food was great. The owner/chef was more than willing to accept any suggestions Gordon had. The restaurant was inviting, and the staff was friendly. They were really doing it alright. I really didn't like the way the owner's wife was portrayed in the episode. She was a lovely, friendly woman who liked to make sure her customers felt welcome and were happy. I really miss that place, and I hope the owners and staff are doing well today. I went to Amy's Baking Company in Scottsdale. It was the restaurant in the episode with the crazy Karen. I think it was the only restaurant the show featured where Gordon just walked off because they were too difficult to deal with. I went to check it out after the show had aired, because why not? Food was unmemorable. The place was dead. My friend and I were the only patrons in there. The husband/owner was our server. He was perfectly pleasant. Didn't ever go back. And it's closed now. Park's Edge in Atlanta was in S05E12 of Kitchen Nightmares. The place was about 3 blocks from me. They operated in my neighborhood for a couple of years before Gordon visited. They did so without a liquor license, yet offered bottomless mimosas. They were combative to residential neighbors who lived within feet of the location. They bounced checks that were meant to be donations to the neighborhood and never paid. Food was not great. Their whole neighborhood figured out not to go there pretty quickly, but offers like their illegal bottomless mimosas brought people from all over, and they managed to stay afloat. Barely. Gordon pointed out a ton of stuff in the episode, but barely scratched the surface on addressing all the things they had done wrong. That episode was definitely not fake, and Gordon's crew probably left a ton of additional stupidity from the owners on the cutting room floor, just to get the time to fit. They never got any better after Gordon left and ignored his advice. The neighborhood had watch parties when the episode aired to laugh at how ridiculous the restaurant was, because we'd all experienced it firsthand. Park's Edge then proceeded to get a 4,400 seat score shortly after the episode and closed permanently sometime after. An amazing and fun spot went into its place about a year later that everyone loves, is still there, and is a smashing success. I go there often. I ate at J. Willie's in South Bend. After Gordon visited, the menu was pretty good and the staff/service was friendly, but the actual food was largely crappy. The issues weren't because of Gordon. It was the preparation. It seemed like everything had been under a warmer and microwaved as opposed to freshly made. The potato skins were dried out, and BBQ sauce was point meh. With a little more effort in the kitchen, the place could have made it. It had solid decor and had a few cool historical items from Notre Dame football on the walls. But I think the biggest obstacle was the fact they couldn't keep up with Famous Dave's, which was not too far away and made/makes better food. In retrospect, it was a bit of a red flag that it was empty on a Notre Dame football weekend and we were seated almost immediately. It wasn't too long after my visit that it shut down. I didn't know it was on Kitchen Nightmares until I looked at the wall on the way out and saw his photo with the staff. A place I grew up eating at, due to lack of other options in now Ayersville, Michigan, was on Restaurant Impossible. The food was always pretty average to mediocre, but it was one of the few options at the time. I think a lot of stuff was microwaved. The interior had a specific decor theme which didn't age well. It was always dark and dusty. After the show came through, there was an immediate difference in the food and decor. Everything was a little bit better. However, I think they quickly reverted back to their old microwave ways and the restaurant eventually closed. Before he came to my town there was a restaurant Levantis. Every Christmas season my family and I would go there, and I thought the food tasted fine. I was 11, so that could be a reason why. It was Italian food, and for some reason was changed to a burger place. When he finished up with the place, it was cool for a while, because my town was so small and out of the way, but eventually they sold the place. In my opinion, this was because of the location of the place, it being on the end of town rather than in the middle, and Italian food was being dominated by another restaurant down the street. I guess the owners didn't like making burgers either. It was cool to have a television crew on my main street though. I ate at Cafe Hon a handful of times before it ended up on the show. The place was kind of a tourist trap, but the food was decent. They would have pretty good specials in the middle of the week, which was when I would go. They mostly started having problems with PR because the owner did a bunch of things that pissed off the locals. I think on the episode Ramsey actually liked the food, and it was more about him trying to help the owner with the PR situation. I think I ate there once after the show aired. It was fine. The place seemed to have bounced back. It closed this year. I'm not sure if COVID did them in, or if they were having other problems. I also went to Murphy's a couple of times. Dive bar in Fells Point that was on Bar SQ. I got really sick the day after eating/drinking there one night. In their def and side rank a lot that night, but seeing how their kitchen was run did make me think maybe they gave me food poisoning. I did not go back after it reopened. I think it might have even closed for good before the episode even aired. Yes, the Greek at the harbor in Ventura, California. This would have been about 2002, so before the show. My immediate impressions were of a stale, musty restaurant on its last legs. The carpet was stained beyond redemption. There was a disused buffet line, and in general it was pretty clear the only reason the place survived was its location on the waterfront. We ordered our food without incident. It was mediocre, nothing horrible, just so-so. Then the real weirdness began. The lights dimmed a touch, and loud thumping, jangly music started blaring. Out came prancing this hefty middle-aged woman dressed like a movie version of a gypsy with a gyrating bulbous gut. She weaved her way between the tables, with a wry smile on her face, like her pride as a belly dancer was directly correlated to how uncomfortable she could make the diners. I was there with my fiance and sister, and frankly speaking I didn't know where to look or what to do when she arrived at my table with her belly rolls rippling against my hair. Luckily, my bat-crazy sister also fancied herself a gypsy belly dancer and saw her opportunity to share some of the spotlight. She sprang from her seat, pranced over to my side of the table, and if one belly dancer in your face wasn't enough, well, how about two with one of them your older sister? My sister grabbed one of the handkerchiefs that the dancer was waving around, and then together they weaved their way through all of the tables, giving each man a good look at their belly buttons. Though I doubt anyone else was as taken aback as I was at the whole affair. I found the room very hot and pressing, like the walls were closer than they had seemed when we first came in, and sat down. I glanced at my fiance with the impulse to apologize, but I couldn't articulate much but a blubber over my glass of water. Finally, the music stopped, and the dancer made a dramatic, flourishing exit through some musty curtains. My sister came gliding back to the table with a look of triumph. For the rest of the night, I chose not to speak about any of it or look at anyone else in the eye. When I saw the episode of Kitchen Nightmares years later, I fell out of my chair. As awkward as that was for Gordon, at least he didn't have his sister leaping out of her chair and dialing that awkwardness up to 11.